Mother and son abandoned in the cruel winter cold by a heartless husband, but fate had an unexpected surprise in store. The cutting January wind swept through the streets of Pine Ridge in the Colorado mountains as Sarah held her son, Ethan, tightly against her chest. Tears froze on her face before they could even reach her chin. Just 2 hours ago, Mark, her husband, had packed all of their belongings into 2 worn-out suitcases and thrown them out of the house. "I can't stand supporting you two anymore. Get out of my sight and take that kid with you," were his last words before slamming the door. Sarah looked at Ethan, only 6 years old, trembling in her arms. The little boy didn't understand why they couldn't go back home, why his father was so angry, why they were sitting on the steps of a restaurant while the temperature plummeted lower and lower. "Mommy, it's so cold," murmured Ethan, his lips already turning purple from the freezing wind that blew mercilessly. "I know, sweetheart. We'll find a warm place soon, I promise," Sarah replied, though she had no idea where to go. Her family lived in Florida, and she had cut off contact with all of them when she married Mark and moved to the mountains. The few friends she had were wives of her husband's friends, and she was too ashamed to reach out to them. How could she explain that her perfect husband had kicked her out of the house? Through the restaurant window, Sarah watched families gathered around tables, savoring fondue and hot chocolate. The yellowish light created a cozy atmosphere that cruelly contrasted with the cold that she and Ethan were facing. A waitress had shooed them away from the door earlier, thinking they were beggars. Sarah adjusted the wool cap on Ethan's head, zipping up his jacket more tightly, mentally thanking herself for managing to grab warm clothes before leaving. However, she knew they wouldn't survive long in this cold. The money she had in her purse would barely cover a snack, and even then she hesitated to spend it. "Mum, that man is looking at us," whispered Ethan, discreetly pointing to someone inside the restaurant. Sarah raised her gaze and saw a tall man, approximately 40 years old, watching them through the window. Immediately she stood up, taking Ethan by the hand. The last thing she needed was trouble with strangers. "Come on, son, let's find another place," she said, pulling the boy along. But as she turned, she realized the man had left the restaurant and was now standing on the sidewalk, just a few feet away from them. Sarah tightened her grip on Ethan's hand and prepared to run when the man spoke. "Excuse me, I don't mean to frighten you. I've seen you sitting here for over an hour. It's too cold to be outside. Can I help in any way?" His voice was calm and his gaze gentle. He wore an apron under his coat, indicating that he worked at the restaurant. Even so, Sarah hesitated. "We're fine, thank you," she responded dryly, taking another step back. "Mommy, I'm cold," whimpered Ethan, visibly shivering. The man looked at the boy and then at Sarah. "My name is Michael. I own that restaurant." He pointed to the establishment behind them. "I have a room in the back that I rarely use. You can spend the night there if you want. No strings attached." Sarah looked at Michael, suspicious. In her 32 years of life, she had learned that no one offered help without expecting something in return. But Ethan was shivering more and more, and their options were running out. "Why would you help strangers?" she asked, still reluctant. Michael gave a sad smile. "Because I've been on the other side. I know what it's like to have nowhere to go. On a cold day like this," he extended his hand. "Come, at least come inside to warm up a bit." The restaurant was already closing when they entered through the back door. The warmth immediately enveloped Sarah and Ethan, who sighed with relief. Michael led them down a narrow hallway to a small room with a twin bed, a couch, and a heater. "It's not much, but it's warm. The bathroom is over there." He pointed to a door. "I'll bring you something to eat." When Michael left, Sarah hugged Ethan tightly, tears now flowing freely. The reality of the situation was starting to sink in. She was alone, unemployed, homeless with a young child to raise, depending on the charity of a stranger. Michael returned with 2 bowls of steaming soup and freshly baked bread. Ethan attacked the food immediately while Sarah ate slowly, observing the man who had taken them in. He was handsome in a subtle way. Dark hair with grey strands at the temples, deep brown eyes and stubble that gave him a tired look. "Thank you," she finally said. "I don't know how I'll repay you." Michael shook his head. "You don't need to. Tomorrow we can talk about what happened and how I can help. Now get some rest." That night, lying next to Ethan on the small bed, Sarah cried silently. How had she ended up in this situation? She remembered when she met Mark 8 years ago in Miami. He was on vacation, staying at the hotel where she worked as a maid. It was love at first sight, or so she thought. A month of intense romance, and he proposed to her, promising a dream life in the mountains. In the first few years, everything seemed perfect. Mark was attentive, loving, and seemed happy when she got pregnant with Ethan. But after their son's birth, something changed. He started drinking, complaining about the baby's crying, saying she no longer paid attention to him. Arguments became frequent, as did the accusations. And she gradually isolated herself, losing the few friends she had made, focusing only on taking care of Ethan and trying to please her husband. In recent months, Mark had lost his job, and things had drastically worsened. He spent his days at home, drinking and blaming Sarah for his failures. Until that afternoon, after another argument about money, he simply exploded. Sarah closed her eyes, trying to push away the memories. Beside her, Ethan slept deeply, his little face finally relaxed. She caressed his hair, silently promising that somehow she would give her son a better future. The next morning, she woke up to the smell of fresh coffee. Michael was in the small kitchen attached to the room preparing breakfast. Ethan was already sitting at the table, devouring pancakes with chocolate syrup. "Good morning," said Michael, handing Sarah a cup of coffee. "I hope you slept well." Sarah nodded, a little embarrassed. In the daylight, the reality of her situation seemed even more humiliating. "We don't want to be a burden. We'll leave after breakfast." Michael observed her for a moment. "Where will you go?" The question hung in the air. Sarah had no answer. "Look," Michael continued, "I don't know what happened to you, and I don't need to know if you don't want to tell me. But I need help at the restaurant. One of the waitresses moved away last week, and I have an open position. If you're interested—" Sarah stared at him, surprised. "Are you offering me a job?" "I'm offering an opportunity. The work isn't easy and the pay isn't great at the beginning. But it includes meals, and you can stay in the room until you find a place. Why would you do this for us? You don't even know us." Michael sighed, sitting down at the table. "As I said yesterday, I've been on the other side. I know what it's like to have nothing and no one." He looked at Ethan, who was now playing with a drawing Michael had given him to color. "Besides, the boy reminds me of someone." Sarah wanted to ask more, but something in Michael's expression made her hold back. There was pain there, an old, unhealed pain. Instead, she said, "I accept the job and I promise I'll work hard." Michael smiled, genuinely this time. "Great, you can start today. The restaurant opens at 11 a.m. In the weeks that followed, Sarah threw herself into the work. Michael's restaurant, Mountain Flavors, was small but popular, specializing in regional Colorado cuisine with a contemporary twist. Learning all the waitress duties was challenging, especially dealing with demanding customers, but she was determined not to disappoint Michael. Ethan started attending the local school, and Michael helped with the enrollment, claiming to be a distant relative of the family. In the late afternoons, the boy would stay at the restaurant, doing homework at a small table in the back, or helping with small tasks, like folding napkins. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like, and especially, subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. As the days passed, Sarah began to notice small details about Michael. How he always saved a piece of chocolate cake for Ethan. How he treated his employees with respect, never raising his voice even on the most stressful days. How sometimes she would catch him looking out the window with a distant expression, as if searching for something on the horizon. One night, after the restaurant closed, Michael invited her to have a glass of wine. Ethan was already asleep, and Sarah accepted. Curious. Sitting in the empty kitchen, with only the sound of the wind outside, she finally gathered the courage to ask, "Do you have family, Michael?" He swirled the wine in his glass before answering. "I did. My parents passed away many years ago. I have a brother, but we don't speak." "Why not?" Michael gave a bitter smile. "Long story. In short, they didn't approve of some choices I made in life." "What choices?" "Dropping out of law school to study culinary arts, selling my part of the family business to open this restaurant. Things like that." He took a sip of wine. "And you? Do you have family besides Ethan?" Sarah hesitated. It was the first time someone had asked about her past since she arrived in Pine Ridge. "My parents live in Miami. I have a sister too, but we lost touch when I got married." "To Ethan's father?" She nodded, feeling a lump in her throat. "Mark, we met in Miami where I worked as a hotel maid. He was on vacation. It all happened very quickly. A month later we were married and moving here." "And what happened?" Sarah looked at the wine in her glass, tears threatening to fall. "He changed. Or maybe I never really knew him. At the beginning everything seemed perfect, but after Ethan was born," she shook her head, "he started saying I didn't pay attention to him, that I only cared about the baby. He started drinking, becoming aggressive. He lost jobs because he couldn't stay sober, and Her voice faltered. "And you?" "I believed it was my fault, that if I were a better wife, more attentive, prettier, he would go back to being the man I fell in love with." Sarah wiped away a tear that was rolling down. "What an idiot I was." Michael reached across the table, lightly touching her hand. "You weren't an idiot. You were manipulated by someone who should have protected you." Michael's touch sent a shiver up Sarah's arm. She gently withdrew her hand, confused by her own reaction. "Anyway, a month ago he lost another job. The bills started piling up, and then that day we had a horrible fight. He was drunk, said that Ethan and I were a burden, that he was tired of supporting useless mouths. He threw our things into suitcases and kicked us out. Said if we tried to come back it would be worse." Michael watched her intently. "Did you think about seeking help? Police, social services?" Sarah laughed humorlessly. "With what evidence? He never physically abused me, only psychologically. And I never worked here. I can't prove address. I have nowhere to go. I'm ashamed to reach out to the few people I know. And your family in Miami. They warned me about Mark, said it was too fast, that I barely knew him. When I decided to marry him anyway, my father said I was making my choice and would have to live with it." Sarah sighed. "I guess they were right." Michael was silent for a moment, then said softly, "We all make mistakes, Sarah. The important thing is to learn from them and move forward." That night, lying in bed next to Ethan, Sarah thought about her conversation with Michael. There was something comforting about him, a security she hadn't felt in a long time. For the first time in weeks, she fell asleep without crying. The days went by, and a routine of work and school was established. Sarah noticed that Ethan was happier, more talkative. He adored Michael, always following him around the kitchen, asking questions about the dishes and ingredients. And Michael, to her surprise, had infinite patience with the boy. One afternoon, while picking up Ethan from school, the teacher asked to speak with Sarah. "Ethan is adapting very well," said Mrs. Johnson, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes. "But today something happened that concerned me. During a family activity, he drew 3 people, himself, you, and a man he called Uncle Mike. When I asked about his father, Ethan got very quiet and then said he didn't want his old dad anymore. He wanted Uncle Mike as his new dad." Sarah felt her face burn with embarrassment. We're going through a difficult separation. Michael is my boss. He helped us when we needed it." The teacher nodded understandingly. "I understand. I just thought you should know." Children. Ethan's age process changes differently. It might be good to talk to him about this. On the way back to the restaurant, Sarah tried to approach the subject. "Ethan, your teacher told me about your drawing. You know that Uncle Michael is our friend, right? He's not really your family." Ethan kicked a small stone on the sidewalk. "But he's nice to me. He doesn't yell like Daddy, and he makes you smile, Mummy." Sarah took her son's hand, not knowing what to say. It was true that Michael had brought some light back into her life, but that didn't mean there was anything more between them. Or did it? That night, after putting Ethan to bed, Sarah found Michael on the back porch of the restaurant, admiring the city lights. Pine Ridge was especially beautiful at night, with its European-style buildings and trees, decorated with tiny lights even, outside the Christmas season. "May I join you?" asked Sarah. Michael smiled, indicating the space beside him on the wooden bench. "Of course. Beautiful night, isn't it?" Sarah nodded, sitting down. For a moment, they sat in silence, enjoying the view and the cool breeze. Finally, she said, "Ethan's teacher called me to school today. It seems he drew you as part of our family." Michael turned to her, surprised. "Oh, and does that bother you?" "It's not that. It's just—" Sarah hesitated. "I'm afraid he's getting too attached. I don't want him to get hurt when we have to leave." "And why would you have to leave?" The question caught Sarah by surprise. "Well, we can't stay here forever. We've already abused your hospitality too much." Michael looked at her for a long moment. "What if I said I don't mind you staying? That in fact I like having you here?" Sarah's heart raced. "Michael." "Listen," he continued, "I know it might seem strange. We met a short time ago under unusual circumstances, but since you and Ethan arrived, this house finally feels like a home. The restaurant is better than ever thanks to your work. And Ethan," he smiled, "that boy brings life to any environment." Sarah felt tears forming in her eyes. "I don't know what to say. Don't say anything now. Just think about this. You can stay for as long as you want. No pressure, no expectations, just stay." That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. Michael's words echoed in her mind. There was something growing between them, something she hadn't allowed herself to feel since she met Mark. But this time it was different. It wasn't that overwhelming and blind passion she had felt before, but something calmer, deeper, built day by day through small gestures and conversations. The next day, while serving tables, Sarah noticed a customer who was watching her intently. It was a man in his 30s, well-dressed, with a familiar air that she couldn't quite place. When she approached to serve him, he smiled in a way that made her uncomfortable. "How can I help you, sir?" she asked, maintaining her professionalism. "Sarah, isn't it? Beautiful name for a beautiful woman." She forced a smile. "Thank you. Have you decided what you'd like to order?" "Actually, I came here specifically to see you." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "Excuse me?" "Mark told me about you. I'm Greg, his cousin. He's been looking for you for weeks." Sarah's blood ran cold. She instinctively looked toward the back of the restaurant, where Ethan was doing his homework. Greg followed her gaze. "The boy is here too, then. Great. Mark will be happy. He feels terrible about what happened, you know. He wants you to come, back home." "Please leave," Sarah whispered, feeling panic rising. "Don't be like that. He's your husband, the father of your child. Everyone fights sometimes. He's sorry he stopped drinking, found a new job." "Is there a problem here?" Michael's voice sounded behind Sarah. He had noticed her discomfort and approached, positioning himself slightly in front of her. Greg looked from Sarah to Michael, a malicious smile forming on his lips. "So that's why you don't want to come back? Already found a replacement?" Michael remained calm. "Sir, I'm going to ask you to leave. Now." "Or what? You'll throw me out?" "This is a public establishment. It's a private establishment which I own, and I reserve the right to refuse service to anyone." Michael gestured to one of the waiters. "Andrew, please escort this gentleman to the exit." Greg rose slowly, still smiling. "This isn't over, Sarah. Mark will know where you are now, and he won't be happy to learn that his wife is living with another man." After Greg left, Sarah rushed to the back, checking on Ethan. The boy was oblivious to what had happened, focused on his drawings. Michael followed her. "Was that a relative of your ex-husband?" he asked, concerned. Sarah nodded, trembling. "His cousin. Mark must have sent him to look for me." She hugged herself, feeling exposed, vulnerable, and now he knows where we are. Michael placed his hands on her shoulders. "Hey, look at me. I won't let anything happen to you both, understand? Nothing." The conviction in his voice momentarily calmed Sarah, but the fear persisted. What if Mark came after them? What if he tried to take Ethan? Technically, they were still married and he had rights over their son. In the nights that followed, Sarah barely slept, starting at any noise, imagining Mark breaking into the restaurant to take them back. Michael noticed her anxiety and, without questioning much, installed security cameras and changed the locks. A week later, Michael called her for a serious conversation. "I have a proposal for you," he said, sitting at the kitchen table after the restaurant closed. Sarah looked at him, curious. "What kind of proposal?" I talked to a lawyer friend about your situation. If you want to divorce Mark, he can help. And we can also request a restraining order if you feel threatened. Sarah felt a mix of relief and apprehension. The idea of officially divorcing brought a sense of liberation, but also of finality. It would be the definitive end to the dream she had once cherished. I don't know if I have money to pay a lawyer, she replied, hesitant. My friend will charge only the minimum necessary, and I can advance part of your salary. Seeing her expression, Michael added, consider it a loan if you prefer. You can pay me back when you can. Sarah reflected for a moment. Why are you doing all this for us, Michael? The truth. Michael sighed, running his hand through his hair. When I was 10 years old, my mother fled home with my brother and me. My father was a violent, controlling man. One night, he went too far, and she decided it was time to leave. We had nowhere to go, no money. We ended up at an old friend of hers who took us in. He paused, looking at his hands. But my father found us, convinced my mother to go back, promising he had changed. She believed him. 3 months later, he... Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Michael didn't complete the sentence, but it wasn't necessary. Sarah understood what he meant. She reached out, touching his hand on the table. I'm so sorry, she said softly. It was a long time ago, Michael replied with a sad smile, but I never forgot the face of that woman who helped us, without asking questions, without judging. When I saw you and Ethan that night, sitting in the cold, it was as if the universe was giving me a chance to give back. Sarah felt tears in her eyes. Michael's story explained so many things. His kindness, his understanding, the special connection he had with Ethan. I'll accept your help, she finally said. I want to divorce Mark, start a new life for me and Ethan. Michael squeezed her hand. I'll call my friend tomorrow. The following weeks were intense. Sarah met the lawyer, Mr. Davis, who initiated the divorce process. They also requested a restraining order against Mark, based on reports of psychological abuse and the veiled threat that Greg had made at the restaurant. Work at Mountain Flavors continued, and Sarah discovered she had a talent for administration. She began helping Michael with orders, bills, suggesting new dishes for the menu. A natural partnership formed between them, both at work and in their personal lives. Ethan, meanwhile, was flourishing. At school, he was a dedicated and sociable student. At home, he loved helping in the kitchen, declaring that he would be a chef like Uncle Mike when he grew up. The shadow of Mark seemed increasingly distant from his life. One night, Michael invited Sarah for a special dinner, just the two of them. He hired a babysitter for Ethan and reserved a table at the best restaurant in Pine Ridge. Sarah was surprised by the invitation, but accepted, feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Is everything okay? She asked Michael as they were led to a table with a view of the illuminated gardens. You seem tense. Michael smiled, adjusting his shirt collar. I'm fine, I just wanted to celebrate. Celebrate what? The restaurant's success this month. And, he hesitated, maybe something more personal. The meal was delicious, and the conversation flowed easily, as it always did between them. They talked about work, about Ethan, about plans for the future. When dessert arrived, an elaborate chocolate lava cake with berry sauce, Michael cleared his throat, seeming nervous. Sarah, there's something I've wanted to say for some time, he began, looking into her eyes. Before he could continue, Sarah's phone rang. She looked at the display and frowned. It's the babysitter. She answered quickly, and her face paled. As she listened, We're coming right now. Don't leave him alone, please. What happened? Asked Michael, already signaling for the waiter to bring the check. Mark, Sarah replied, her voice trembling. He showed up at the restaurant demanding to see Ethan. The babysitter locked him in the room, but he's threatening to break down the door. They left in a hurry, taking the first available taxi. The entire way, Sarah felt her heart in her throat. What if Mark took Ethan? What if he hurt the babysitter? The worst possibilities swirled in her mind. When they arrived at the restaurant, they saw 2 police cars parked in front. Sarah jumped out of the taxi before it had completely stopped, running inside. A police officer intercepted her. Are you Sarah Collins? He asked. Yes, I am. Where? Is my son? Is he okay? Your son is safe, ma'am. He's with a female officer in the back of the establishment. Sarah felt immense relief. Michael arrived at her side, equally concerned. And Mark? He asked the officer. Mr. Mark Collins is currently detained. He attempted to enter private property, threatened a minor who was caring for the child, and resisted police approach. Additionally, he was visibly intoxicated. Sarah and Michael were led to the back, where they found Ethan playing cards with a young female officer. When he saw his mother, the boy ran into her arms. "Mommy, Daddy came and he was yelling a lot. Aunt Jenny hid me in the room and locked the door. It was scary." Sarah hugged her son tightly, tears of relief streaming down her face. "Everything is okay now, my love. No one is going to hurt you." In the days that followed, the incident had significant consequences. The restraining order was immediately granted, prohibiting Mark from approaching Sarah and Ethan. Additionally, he was charged with disturbing the peace and making threats, which strengthened Sarah's case in the divorce process. Mr. Davis explained that with the restraining order and the incident documented by the police, the divorce would likely be granted quickly, with Ethan's custody remaining entirely with Sarah. A week after the incident, Sarah was in the restaurant kitchen, helping Michael prepare a new dish for the menu, when he asked the question that had been interrupted that night. "Sarah, I know it might still be early, but..." He took a deep breath. "I'm in love with you, and with Ethan too, if that makes sense. You've brought something to my life that I didn't even know was missing." Sarah stopped what she was doing, her heart racing. Part of her wanted to throw herself into his arms immediately, to say that she was in love too, that she dreamed of a future together. But another part, the one that still carried scars from the past, hesitated. "Michael, I feel something for you too. Something I've never felt before, not even for Mark at the beginning. But I'm afraid of being wrong again, of trusting the wrong person." Michael approached, taking her hands in his. "I understand your fear, and I respect it. I'm not asking for an answer now. I just wanted you to know how I feel. We can take it slow, at your pace." She smiled, feeling a wave of affection for this man who seemed to understand exactly what she needed. "Thank you for being patient with me." Michael gently kissed her forehead. "It's worth waiting for something precious." Spring arrived in Pine Ridge, bringing colorful flowers and a sense of renewal. Sarah's divorce was finalized, with Ethan's custody granted entirely to her. Mark, after the incident, apparently realized he had lost the battle and made no further contact. The restaurant was thriving, now with Sarah as an official partner, a surprise that Michael had given her on the day her divorce was decreed. "You've transformed this place as much as I have. It's only fair that it's yours too," he had said. On a sunny afternoon in April, while Ethan played in the small garden out back, Sarah found an old box in the pantry closet that she had never opened before. Inside were photographs, documents, and a small leather notebook. Curious, she picked up the notebook and began to leaf through it. It was a diary, written in Michael's strong, angular handwriting. She knew she shouldn't read it, but an entry caught her attention. A date from almost a year ago, a few days before she and Ethan arrived at the restaurant. "Today marks 10 years since I lost Emily and our son. 10 years since the accident that took away the only people I truly loved. The guilt still consumes me. If I hadn't worked late that night, it would have been me picking up Jason from school, not her. Maybe they would be alive. Maybe I wouldn't be so alone. The restaurant is my only distraction, the only thing that keeps me sane. But at night, when everything is quiet, I feel the weight of loneliness. Jason would be 15 now. What kind of teenager would he be? Who would he look more like? Questions that will never have answers." Sarah closed the diary, feeling guilty for having invaded Michael's privacy, but also deeply moved. He had never mentioned being married before, much less having had a son. Now she better understood his immediate connection with Ethan, why it seemed so natural for him to care for a boy. And she also understood the melancholy she sometimes saw in his gaze. That night, after Ethan fell asleep, Sarah found Michael on the porch contemplating the stars as he often did. She sat beside him, taking his hand in hers. "I found your diary today," she confessed. "I didn't mean to invade your privacy, but I read an entries about Emily and Jason." Michael tensed for a moment, then relaxed, gently squeezing her hand. "I thought that diary was lost." "Why did you never tell me about them?" He sighed deeply. "It's not something easy to talk about, and also, I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" "That you'd think I'm using you and Ethan to replace them. That it's not you I love, but the idea of having a family again." Sarah turned to face him. "And is that what you're doing?" Michael shook his head, his eyes moist with unshed tears. "No. What I feel for you, for Ethan, is unique, special. Emily and Jason will always have a place in my heart, but you and Ethan aren't substitutes. You're a new beginning, a second chance I never thought I'd have." Sarah felt tears in her own eyes. Without saying a word, she leaned in and kissed him softly on the lips. It was a gentle kiss, full of promise and understanding. When she pulled away, she saw Michael's face illuminated by an emotion that mirrored her own. "I love you too, Michael," she said simply. "And I'm ready for this new beginning." That night, under the starry sky of Pine Ridge, two hearts wounded by the past found healing in each other, not because they forgot their pain, but because they chose to use that pain as a foundation for something new and beautiful. The months that followed were full of discoveries and adjustments. Sarah and Michael learned to navigate their new relationship, respecting the ghosts of both their pasts, but not letting those ghosts control their future. Ethan, delighted with the idea of having Michael officially as part of the family, flourished more and more. One afternoon, while having a picnic in the park, Ethan asked the question he had been rehearsing for weeks. "Uncle Mike, can I call you Dad?" Michael was speechless, looking at Sarah for guidance. She smiled, encouraging him. "If your mom agrees, I would be very honored, Ethan," he finally replied, his voice thick with emotion. The boy looked at his mother, who nodded. "Of course you can, son, if that's what you want." "I do, now we're a real family, aren't we?" Michael hugged Ethan tightly, silent tears streaming down his face. "Yes, we're a family. Forever." The following spring, Sarah and Michael got married in a simple ceremony in the restaurant's gardens. Ethan, proud, led his mother down the improvised flower aisle. Among the guests were Sarah's parents and sister, who had finally reconciled after years of silence. After the ceremony, when everyone was celebrating, Sarah found a moment to be alone on the porch, looking at the town that had become her home. She thought about how life took unexpected turns. Just over a year ago, she was sitting on those same steps, in the cold, without hope, without a future. Now she was married to a man who truly loved her. Her son was happy, and together they had built a life she had never imagined possible. Michael found her there, embracing her from behind. "What are you thinking about, Mrs. Bennet?" he whispered, in her ear. Sarah smiled, leaning back against him. "About how fate sometimes chooses strange paths to lead us where we need to be." "Do you believe in fate?" he asked, curious. "I believe life gives us opportunities. It's up to us to have the courage to seize them, even when we're afraid." She turned to face him. "Thank you for being my opportunity, Michael." He smiled, kissing her softly. "And thank you for being mine, Sarah." In the garden, Ethan played, with the other children, his laughter echoing in the sunny afternoon. Sarah watched him, feeling deep gratitude. Her son now had a real home, a real father, and she had finally found the genuine love she deserved. That celebration night, under the starry sky of Pine Ridge, as they danced their first dance as husband and wife, Sarah knew with certainty, sometimes you have to lose everything to find what truly matters. You have to go through the harshest winter to appreciate the warmth of spring. And as Michael led her across the dance floor, his gaze full of love and promise, she silently thanked that cold January night when everything seemed lost. Because it was precisely in that moment of darkness that light began to find its way back into her life. 6 months after the wedding, Mountain Flavors expanded, opening a branch in Cedar Falls, a neighboring town to Pine Ridge. Sarah took over management of the new restaurant, proving herself to be a skilled and creative administrator. The clientele grew every day, attracted not only by the excellent food but also by the welcoming atmosphere she created. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, Please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. On an autumn afternoon, while reviewing the accounts at the original restaurant's office, Sarah received an unexpected visit. An elegant, middle-aged woman entered timidly, looking around, as if searching for someone. "Can I help you?" asked Sarah, rising to greet her. The woman smiled nervously. "I'm looking for Michael Bennett. I was told he is the owner." "Yes, he is. I'm Sarah, his wife." She extended her hand, which the woman shook. "Michael is in the kitchen. I can call him for you if you'd like." "Please," replied the woman, sitting down when Sarah indicated a chair. "My name is Nancy Bennett." Sarah paused, surprised. "Bennett? Your sister-in-law? I'm married to Daniel, Michael's brother." Nancy lowered her eyes. "Or at least I was. We separated 3 months ago." Sarah nodded, remembering what Michael had told her about his brother. They hadn't spoken in years since the fight over the family inheritance. Michael had sold his part of the family business to open the restaurant, which Daniel never forgave. "I'll call Michael," said Sarah, heading to the kitchen. She found her husband finishing a new dish, concentrated as he always was when creating. She approached, touching his arm lightly. "Michael, there's someone who wants to talk to you. Nancy, your brother's wife." He froze, his expression of surprise giving way to confusion. "Nancy? Here? Why?" Sarah shrugged. "I don't know, but it seems important." Michael followed her to the office where Nancy was waiting. When she saw him, she stood up, visibly nervous. "Michael," she said, her voice almost a whisper, "it's been a long time." "Nancy?" He remained formal, distant. "What brings you here?" Nancy looked at Sarah, then back at Michael. "Can we talk in private?" Sarah was already preparing to leave when Michael held her hand. "No. Whatever you have to say, you can say in front of my wife." Nancy nodded, resigned. "That's fair." She took a deep breath before continuing. "I'm here because Daniel had an accident. It's nothing serious," she added quickly upon seeing Michael's alarmed expression. "But he'll be in recovery for a few weeks, and he asked to see you." Michael frowned, suspicious. "Daniel asked to see me. After more than 10 years, without exchanging a word?" "People change, Michael," Nancy replied softly, "especially when they face their own mortality. The accident made him reevaluate many things, among them his relationship with you." Sarah gently squeezed her husband's hand, a silent gesture of support. Michael seemed torn between suspicion and hope. "Where is he?" he finally asked. "At Pine Ridge Memorial Hospital. He would be very happy if you visited him." Michael was silent for a long moment. Sarah could feel the internal battle he was waging. On one hand, his brother had completely rejected him when he needed support the most, after losing Emily and Jason. On the other, he was his only living relative. "I'll think about it," he said at last. "I can't promise anything, but I'll think about it." Nancy seemed to accept this answer. She stood up, extending a card. "My number, in case you decide to go. Thank you for seeing me." After she left, Michael remained silent, looking out the window. Sarah approached, hugging him from behind. "What are you thinking?" she asked softly. "About how the past always finds a way to catch up with us," he replied, turning to face her. "I don't know if I'm ready to see Daniel again. We said terrible things to each other, things that can't be easily forgotten." Sarah nodded, understanding. "It's your decision, and I'll support you whatever it is, but..." She hesitated. "Maybe this is an opportunity to heal an old wound, to bring closure to something that has been left open for so long." Michael smiled slightly, touching her face. "Always wise. That's one of the reasons I love you." That night they discussed the matter at length. Michael told her more about his relationship with his brother, how they had been close in childhood, how Daniel had protected him from their violent father, but how everything changed after the inheritance and especially after the tragedy with Emily and Jason. He said, "I was throwing away the family legacy because of a foolish dream," recalled Michael, the pain still visible in his voice. "And when I lost Emily and Jason," he said, "it might be punishment for my selfish choices." Sarah felt a wave of anger towards this man she didn't know, who had been capable of saying something so cruel to someone in mourning. But she also knew that holding grudges only poisoned the soul. He was wrong, she said firmly, deeply wrong. And if he's seeking reconciliation now, maybe he's realized that too. The next day, to Sarah's surprise, Michael announced he would go to the hospital. "You were right. I need to bring closure to this, whatever the outcome." "Do you want me to go with you?" she offered. Michael thought for a moment, then nodded. "Yes, I want Daniel to meet the amazing woman I married, and Ethan too, if he wants to come." Ethan, when consulted, was excited about the idea of meeting an uncle he didn't know existed. 2 days later, the small family set off for the hospital, a short drive across town. Pine Ridge Memorial Hospital was a modern building in the center of town. Nancy was waiting for them at reception, visibly relieved they had come. "He's in room 307, she informed them, guiding them through the corridors. "He's better today, more alert." When they entered the room, Sarah felt Michael tense beside her. Daniel Bennett physically resembled his brother, but with harder features, completely grey hair, and an expression of genuine surprise at seeing them. "Michael," he said, his voice hoarse, "you came." Michael approached the bed, cautious. "Nancy said you wanted to see me." Daniel nodded, looking at Sarah and Ethan, who remained near the door. "Is this your family?" "Yes," replied Michael, gesturing for them to come closer. "My wife, Sarah, and my son, Ethan." "Son?" Daniel looked confused. "In my heart, not by blood, but my son without a doubt." Daniel observed the boy, who stared at him with curiosity. "He looks like you when you were that age." An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Nancy, sensing the tension, offered to take Ethan to the cafeteria. Sarah hesitated, but Michael nodded, indicating that he would be fine. When only the three remained, Daniel took a deep breath. "I don't know where to begin." "How about with the reason you want to see me after so long?" suggested Michael, still keeping his distance. Daniel looked at his own hands, bandaged and with IV marks. "The doctor said I was lucky. The accident could have been fatal. When you face death up close, many things become clear." He raised his eyes to his brother. "I realized I would die without having fixed the biggest mistake of my life. Pushing you away." Michael didn't respond, waiting for him to continue. "I was an idiot, Michael, a proud and stubborn idiot. When you decided to sell your part of the business, I felt betrayed, as if you were rejecting our family, our father." "Our father was a monster," interrupted Michael, his voice hard. "Yes, he was," agreed Daniel, surprising him. "And I spent years trying to win the approval of a man who never deserved our respect. You were braver than me, following your own path. I envied that." Michael blinked, absorbing his brother's words. "And what you said about Emily and Jason, that it was punishment." Daniel closed his eyes, as if the memory was too painful. "There's no excuse for that. It was cruel, unforgivable. I was angry, jealous of your success, your happiness. When the tragedy happened, I should have been by your side, not rubbing salt in the wound. I regretted it the moment the words left my mouth, but it was too late." Sarah watched the scene with a heavy heart, seeing the pain in both brothers' eyes. "Why now?" Daniel asked. "Michael. Why not years ago? Pride, shame, fear that you would reject me, and rightfully so." Daniel extended his hand to his brother. "I'm not asking you to forget or forgive what I did. I just wanted you to know that I deeply regret it, and that I miss you, bro." The use of the childhood nickname seemed to break something in Michael. His eyes filled with unshed tears. "I missed you too," he finally admitted. At that moment, Nancy and Ethan returned, breaking the intensity of the moment. Ethan ran to Michael's side, holding his hand. "Dad, Aunt Nancy bought me a huge ice cream." The term "dad" didn't go unnoticed by Daniel, who observed the interaction between Michael and the boy with a new look. "Your father was always good with children," he commented. "When we were small, he always protected the younger kids at school." Ethan looked at Daniel with renewed interest. "Really? What was he like as a kid?" And so, through the innocent eyes of a child, a bridge began to be built between the brothers. Daniel told stories of their childhood, some that Michael had forgotten, others he never imagined his brother remembered. Sarah watched, happy to see Michael reconnecting with this lost part of his past. When they said goodbye, Michael promised to return the next day. On the way to the car, he was quiet, processing everything that had happened. "Are you okay?" asked Sarah, while Ethan walked ahead of them. Michael nodded slowly. "I am. It's strange, but I feel lighter, as if a weight I didn't even know I was carrying has been removed." Sarah smiled, taking his hand. "Family is complicated. Sometimes the people we love the most are the ones who can hurt us the most. Yes, but they can also be the ones who help us heal." Michael kissed her hand. "Thank you for encouraging me to come. You were right, as always." "Not always," laughed Sarah. "But this time, yes. I'm happy that you and Daniel are reconnecting." The visits to the hospital continued for 3 more days until Daniel was discharged. With each meeting, the relationship between the brothers strengthened. It wasn't perfect, there was still much hurt and delicate topics to be addressed, but it was a start. Before they left the hospital, Daniel made an invitation. "When I'm fully recovered, I'd like to visit you, see your restaurant, see where you live, if that's okay with you." Michael looked at Sarah, who smiled encouragingly. "Of course, you will always be welcome." On the way back home, Michael seemed more at peace than Sarah had ever seen him, as if a broken part of him was finally beginning to mend. "You know what I thought today?" he said as they drove along the winding mountain roads. "What?" "That life is truly unpredictable. 2 years ago I was alone, convinced I would never have a family again. Now I have you, Ethan, and even my brother back in my life." He glanced briefly at her, his eyes shining with emotion. "It's more than I deserved." Sarah touched his face lovingly. "It's exactly what you deserve, Michael. All this love, all this happiness." 2 months later, Daniel and Nancy visited Pine Ridge for the first time. Michael welcomed them to the restaurant, proud to show what he had built. Ethan, enchanted with his new uncle, insisted on giving a personal tour of the town. During dinner, Daniel made an announcement. "Nancy and I are thinking of moving here. After the accident, I decided I need a change in life. Denver is too hectic and I've always liked the mountains." Michael was surprised but genuinely happy. "You would be very welcome. Actually," continued Daniel, "I've been thinking about investing in something new, a hotel perhaps, or..." He looked at his brother significantly. "An expansion of your restaurant. I always wanted to work with you since we were boys." Michael and Sarah exchanged glances. They had recently discussed the possibility of expanding the business, perhaps opening a space more focused on events. "It's an interesting idea," Michael replied cautiously. "We need to talk more about it." Nancy smiled, pleased to see the brothers planning something together, even if just hypothetically for now. "I'm so happy you're reconnecting. Daniel never admitted it, but he always missed you terribly, Michael." Winter came again to Pine Ridge, bringing with it snow and memories of how everything had begun for Sarah and Ethan almost 2 years ago. On a particularly cold night, as Michael lit the fireplace, Sarah watched the snow falling outside, thoughtful. "What are you thinking about?" asked Michael, sitting beside her on the couch. "About how life comes full circle. 2 winters ago, we were sitting on the steps of your restaurant, freezing cold with nowhere to go. Now," she looked around the cozy living room of the house they shared, "we have all this. A home, a family, a future." Michael hugged her, kissing the top of her head. "You know what I sometimes think? That it was destiny. That somehow you and Ethan were meant to come into my life on that specific night, at that specific moment." "Do you really believe that?" "I believe some souls are destined to meet no matter the obstacles," he smiled. "And that some stories, even if they begin in pain and despair, can end in the purest happiness." Sarah rested her head on his shoulder, hearing Ethan playing in the next room and feeling the warmth of the fireplace against her face. "I think you're right," she whispered. "Life wasn't perfect. There would always be challenges, painful memories, scars that would never completely disappear. But there in that house built with love, with the man who had restored her ability to believe and trust, Sarah knew they had found something rare and precious, a new beginning, a second chance, a home where winter, no matter how harsh, would never freeze their hearts again." And as the snow continued to fall outside, the three gathered around the fireplace, not just sheltered from the cold, but warmed by the love they had built together, day by day, small gesture after small gesture, until it became something as solid and real as the house that protected them from the storm. 1 year later, on the 3rd anniversary of the day they met, Michael surprised Sarah with a revelation. "I have a present for you," he said, handing her an envelope during the key special dinner they had prepared together. Sarah opened it, curious, and found adoption papers. "What is this?" she asked, confused. Michael smiled, emotional. "They're the papers for me to legally adopt Ethan. If you agree, of course. I want him to officially have my last name, to be my son, not just in my heart, but also in the eyes of the law." Sarah felt tears in her eyes. She knew how much this meant to Michael, how much he loved Ethan as if he were his own son. "Of course I agree. Ethan will be so happy." She hugged him tightly. "You are the best father he could have." That night, they told the news to Ethan, who was thrilled. "Does this mean my name will be Ethan Bennett?" he asked excitedly. "If you want it to be, yes," confirmed Michael. "I do. I'm going to tell everyone at school tomorrow." After Ethan went to sleep, Sarah found Michael on the porch, looking at the stars as he often did when he was pensive. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, joining him. "About how life sometimes takes something precious from us, only to give us something equally precious later." He looked into her eyes. "I never thought I would love another son after Jason. I thought that part of my heart had died with him. But then Ethan appeared, and you and I discovered that the heart has an infinite capacity to love." Sarah rested her head on his shoulder. "You changed our lives, Michael. You saved us, not just from that cold night, but from a life of fear and insecurity. We'll never know how to thank you." "You don't need to thank me. You saved me too." He kissed her forehead. "We were three broken people, each in our own way. Together we became whole again." Ethan's adoption was finalized 6 months later, in a small ceremony at the courthouse, with Daniel and Nancy present, who had permanently moved to Pine Ridge and were now partners in the family's new venture, an event space that combined the culinary excellence of mountain flavors with Daniel's administrative experience. After the ceremony, everyone gathered at Sarah and Michael's house for a celebration lunch. Ethan ran around the garden with his cousins, Daniel and Nancy's children, with whom he had developed an instant friendship. "That boy has boundless energy," commented Daniel, watching his nephew. "Just like his father when he was a child," replied Nancy, winking at Michael. Sarah, serving dessert, paused to observe the scene. Her family gathered, laughing, sharing stories. Her sister Jennifer had come from Miami with her husband for the occasion. Her parents, reconciled with her over a year ago, played with Ethan and their other grandchildren. Michael and Daniel amicably discussed the new menu for the event space. It was an image she could never have imagined on that cold winter night when everything seemed lost, an image of completeness, of belonging, of a circle that was finally closing. "Everything okay?" asked Michael, noticing her contemplative look. Sarah smiled, her eyes shining with happiness. Couldn't be better. Later that night, after all the guests had left and Ethan had finally fallen asleep, exhausted by the day's excitement, Sarah and Michael sat on the porch, now their favorite place for important conversations. "You know what Ethan asked me?" "Yesterday?" said Sarah, holding her husband's hand. "What?" "If he could have a little brother or sister." Michael looked at her, surprised. "And what did you say?" "That it was a possibility, that I would talk to his father about it." She smiled shyly. "What do you think?" Michael took a moment to respond, emotion visible in his gaze. "I think it would be wonderful. A new member for our family, a brother or sister for Ethan." He caressed her face. "But only if you want it too." "I do," confirmed Sarah. "I want to build this new life with you, raise our children together, grow old by your side." She leaned in, kissing him softly. "You gave me a home, Michael. Not just a roof, but a place where my heart feels safe. I want to continue building this home with you one day at a time." He embraced her, and they stayed that way for a long time, just feeling each other's warmth, hearing the sound of each other's breathing, connected by something that went beyond words. A love that had been born of kindness amid despair, of understanding amid pain, of hope amid the ashes of the past. A year later, on a cold January morning, exactly 4 years after they had met, Emily was born, named in honor of Michael's first wife, a gesture from Sarah that symbolized acceptance, an integration of his past into their shared present. Ethan, now 10 years old, was the proudest and most protective brother that could exist, always telling everyone that his little sister had been named after an angel. Michael, holding his daughter for the first time, cried openly, a mixture of joy for the present and peace regarding the past. And so the family that began on a frozen night on the steps of a restaurant in Pine Ridge continued to grow and flourish, proving that even in life's harshest winters, spring always finds a way to return. The end, dear listener. Now tell us what you thought of this journey of overcoming. Do you believe Sarah made the right choice trusting Michael? Leave your sincere comment and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming stories, even on the coldest days.